Sound check. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sound check. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Good afternoon, everybody. Today is October 9th, 2025. I'd like to call this meeting of the Hamilton Renewable Power Incorporated Board of Directors meeting to order. A reminder to look at your electronic device, make sure it's not going to make any sounds so it doesn't interrupt the meeting. And please note quorum is present. In the room with me, I have Councillor Taddison, Councillor Wang, Councillor Maureen Wilson, online Mayor Horvath. Thank you, everybody. Let's go to approval of the agenda. Secretary Salamone, are there any changes to the agenda?
Councillor Wang?
Chair, I hope we can add a topic, I don't know, maybe after items for consideration, but as a bit of an overview or a debrief from the AGM this past week. I thought that this would be a good opportunity to discuss some of the matters that other shareholders brought up.
Okay, so that would be item.
Through the chair, we will add that after item 6.
Okay, excellent. Okay, any other discussion on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll vote by show of hands. All those in favor for the agenda as amended.
Councillor, you need a mover and a seconder. So.
Moved by Councillor Taddison, seconded by Councillor Wang. Thank you very much. That's why you're here, to keep us in line. And so all the hands went up. That was unanimous. Thank you. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations today? Seeing none, we'll move along to approval of the minutes from July 22nd, 2025. Could I have a mover and seconder to adopt those minutes, please? Councillor Taddison, Councillor Wang. I did it right that time. Any discussion on those minutes? Seeing none, show of hands to approve or adopt. Thank you. That takes us to item 6, items for consideration. We have 6.1, HRP 25003, short-term extension of maintenance contract with Toromont at Woodward. Are there any questions on this report? A request for an overview? Over to staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Jan Simatis, Senior Vice President of Hamilton Renewable Power, Inc. This report recommends that the President of the Corporation or their designate be authorized to execute a short-term extension of the maintenance service agreement with Toromont for the Woodward Digester Gas Power Plant. And the proposal includes an initial 6 months extension from January 1st to June 30th, 2026, an option for an additional 6 months from July 1st to December 31st, 2026, which would only be exercised once the results of the biogas feasibility study are available. And the agreement will exclude coverage for catastrophic failures or major capital repairs, with that work deferred until after the feasibility study concludes. To provide a context, the existing maintenance contract with Toromont was first executed in 2018 and later extended in 2023 through Amendment Number 1, which is set to expire on December 31st, 2025. Toromont provides comprehensive maintenance for the Caterpillar G3520C generator at Woodward, including scheduled and unscheduled maintenance, preventative inspections, major overhauls, and 24/7 emergency response. Importantly, Toromont remains the exclusive authorized service provider for the Caterpillar engine at Woodward, meaning no other contractor can perform certified maintenance without compromising the equipment's integrity. With the current contract approaching expiry and the biogas feasibility study underway, this short-term extension serves as a bridge agreement that maintains operational reliability and compliance while preserving flexibility to align future maintenance and investment decisions with the study's findings. The study, expected to conclude in Q2 of 2026, will evaluate whether HRP Inc. should transition fully to RNG, continue with CHP, or maintain a hybrid approach with an emphasis on reducing flaring and maximizing environmental and financial performance. From a financial standpoint, the short-term extension limits costs to routine maintenance, inspections, and minor repairs, keeping expenditures predictable and avoiding major capital spending until the study's recommendations are known. Not extending the contract would create a maintenance gap, risking generator uptime, environmental compliance, and revenue continuity. Conversely, Committing to a new long-term agreement now could restrict flexibility and lead to unnecessary costs if the future operating model changes. This approach reflects a balance between financial prudence and operational stability. It ensures safe, reliable operations at Woodward, supports renewable energy generation, and aligns with the city's broader climate and sustainability objectives. In summary, the short-term extension with Toromont allows HRP Inc. to maintain continuous operations, safeguard critical assets, and make evidence-based decisions once the feasibility study is complete. Staff will report back to the board in Q2 of 2026 with the study results and recommendations for the long-term operating model. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I'll have a look to see if there's any questions. Councillor Wang.
What is the cost of this extension, please?
Just to confirm, the cost of the feasibility study, you mean?
The contract extension should have a cost associated. Just wanted to know what that cost is.
Through the chair, I can start. Shelley Hesmer, Treasurer of Hamilton Renewable Power. So we have not negotiated with the vendor at this point in time. That is what we're looking to do by bringing this report forward, is to start the negotiations, and then, but the annual cost that we have currently, maybe that would be helpful to start with, is $365,000. That is the annual cost that we currently have with Toromont.
Thank you for that. I just wanted to understand what is our normal sort of maintenance contract with them, because just wanted to get into the mindset, because we don't have a ton more runway in our bank account. So I wanted to get a sense for 365 divided by 4, essentially, if we're looking at it from a quarterly sort of perspective. So just under 100K-ish if we're doing 3-month or 4-month increments. Okay. What is the potential cost to us in terms of our maintenance on these Toromonts? Because I know that even though they have the exclusive rights on it, but we're also still kind of doing that kind of work too. So I want to understand what is the cost of the alternative, if there is. Not extending the alternative is not extending the contract that would create a maintenance gap. So I want to understand what are the numbers associated with that.
Good afternoon. Linda Campbell, VP of Ops and Maintenance. At this time, it would be very difficult to put a number around that, mostly because the maintenance that is done outside of the Toromont agreement is for things like oil changes and that kind of thing. So it's small repairs. So that would be, it would be very difficult for us to know. So it would be HCE that would be providing that service as the operator of the equipment. However, when any requirements are, so with vibration testing or anything like that, those are estimate. So I don't know if, Isabella, if you could give a kind of an estimate.
Hi, Jackie Kennedy, President of HRP Inc. So for the equipment to operate and to continue to provide really any value, we do need to do maintenance on it. Toromont is the recommended vendor to do this because they know how to do this. So if we were to not extend their contract, we would be left with options of either having to call in work on an emergency basis, which can be more costly. I'm imagining that this is probably what we would do based on my experience, mostly outside of HRP Inc., but in an operating environment where we would have to call in others to do the maintenance and be kind of fit with the bill at the time. So the recommendation that is before the board today is the proactive approach to take with the folks that are experienced and knowledgeable about this equipment, and where we're trying to trim the amount of work that they would do to manage the budget most responsibly. So we're not investing in capital equipment that we don't intend to continue operating.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that answer. I think that as a board member, I just wanted to understand what are the costs associated, because we have less than a year of runway in our bank accounts. So I'm super concerned when we start to sign new contracts, and we have diminishing revenues. And so this is fiscally, it doesn't make sense, but this is why I wanted to ask these questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wang. Councillor Taddison.
I guess I just wanted to first question along your line of thinking in the sense of, if there's a maintenance gap, it sounds like that there would be more likelihood of a catastrophic failure. And if we had that catastrophic failure, what does that physically look like from our city? What's the response? What would the response be?
So currently, we are committed with Toromont, and their contract covers any catastrophic failures. A renegotiation of that contract may look a little different. We may not, and that's why we are currently unsure of what the next contract price would look like, because right now they build in that catastrophic failure replacement. Right now, if we had a catastrophic failure before the end of the year, they would come in and they would overhaul and they would do exactly what they needed to get it up and running. In our next contract, they likely would not offer us that for a 6-month term. We would probably negotiate a fixed rate of them coming to operate, a traveling charge, those types of things. And then we would decide based on the cost of whatever repair needed to be done at that point in time, whether it would be valuable for us to continue to proceed with that.
Okay, thank you for that. And then if there was a catastrophic failure, what does that look like in terms of environmental costs? Does that mean we're going to do more flaring, or do we just let the methane flow? What happens with that?
So at Woodward right now, there is because we have water operating the renewable natural gas biogas unit, we could ramp that up because we're heading into the winter. So we would hopefully be able to produce a little bit more, but then that's to the most capacity of that. So there would be increased flaring though.
Okay, thanks. And then I guess just one last question in terms of this biogas feasibility study. And if you're prepared to answer this, it says that, it looks like we've got a number of different options: 100% renewable gas, combined heat and power, or a hybrid approach. Do we have any preliminary trends that are emerging that you could share with us today, or is that more of a closed secret?
I can take this question. The feasibility study officially started last week with the first meeting with the consultant. So we do not have no progress have been made in order to share any results with you at this point.
Well, that's all I want, is to hear if there's any data to support, because I'm not really interested in guesses at this point. So thanks for clarifying that. No more questions. And
Okay, Councillor Wilson, then I'll have a question too, I think.
Thank you. Thank you for the report and the overview. I did read the report, but I found the overview very helpful. I'm just wanting to make sure I've understood everything I've heard. We have an existing contract. That contract has already previously been extended. You're looking for a further extension of 6 months. The feasibility study will be coming back in Q2 of 2026. I guess and in the 6-month extension, during that period of extension, we are not covered for catastrophic because they wouldn't want to assume that risk and that cost just with a 6-month extension, if I heard Linda correctly. So would you tag that as an identifiable risk then for the shareholder?
It is definitely a risk because at this point, the contract with Toromont covers us for catastrophic failure. As of January 1st, 2026, when the new contract will come in place, we want to exclude that. And the reason why is the feasibility study will be underway. We don't know what the outcome will be. We don't know if we want to continue using the cogen unit. We don't want to go into a long-term contract with Toromont if that's not the profitable path forward we want to follow. And that's the reason why I want to exclude the catastrophic failure, because we don't want to go into a capital investment to repair the engine when we don't know if that's going to be the long-term investment
Yes.
moving forward.
Sorry to interrupt. Yes, thank you. I think I understand that. Listen, through the chair, I don't pretend to understand much of this. However, I am just trying to drill in on the risk portion. So the risk has been identified as we don't cover catastrophic. I thought I heard through Councillor Tattison's questions that, okay, how would risk present itself? And I thought I heard through the chair that it presents itself as us having to do more flaring. If I've understood, I just want to make sure that the risk doesn't extend into, or here, I'll put it in the way of a question. Does the risk extend into anything financial that we should perhaps be aware of in the operational sense?
The risk of not running means that the revenue would stop. So any kind of income that we would be receiving from the FIT contract would immediately cease because we wouldn't be producing electricity. We would not be able to sell thermal to water for their digestion. So that is the risk of the generator not operating. And a catastrophic failure.
Again, this is where I'm completely exposing my ignorance on these things. By risk, I meant what do staff identify as any financial risk by not having the catastrophic element covered by this extension option? I'm just trying to understand any exposure on that through the chair.
And that's difficult to say because I think if you're referring to maintenance or fixes on the equipment, if it was to go down, it would be a variable expense that we would have to get a quote on and we would have to find out at that point in time, depending on what the failure would be.
Let me maybe put it a different way. In the contract, we have presumably assigned a value to the contractor assuming a risk, catastrophic risk. So there has to be some calibration of a value numerically assigned to that. With the extension of this contract, we're offloading presumably a numeric value onto the municipality away from the contractor. I'm just trying to get a sense of what might that assigned numeric value. Presumably, we had to assign a value to it in our contract negotiation to begin with. That's just what I'm trying to understand through the chair. I'm just looking at my fiduciary responsibility of exposure. Thank you.
Maybe I'll start. So just piggybacking on what Linda's comment was around if there was the failure and the equipment stopped and they were flaring, yes, operationally, we're not generating those revenues. So I think that's the first piece. I just want to make sure that was clear. That is a risk. We wouldn't have those revenues coming in, and that would have a risk to our bank account. I think maybe the question, and I just want to make sure I'm understanding, if we're negotiating a contract, we're paying X amount now, we have a current amount that we're paying. My assumption would be that the annualized or 6-month contract cost would be much lower than what we're paying. I wouldn't say much lower, would be lower because we don't have that catastrophic failure included in that contract. So that cost would be lower. However, you're correct. If it happens, we need to obviously decide, what are we doing with this today based on where we are at? If the feasibility study doesn't come in, what's the cost to fix and what kind of investment would we want to put in there? So that, I think, is a difficult piece because we don't know what could fail. So if you're doing it from a major failure, we would be in a difficult place to make a decision, I think, at that point in time around what could we pay for, how would we pay for it? And given that we don't have the results of the feasibility study, yes, it would be difficult. It would be a decision that would have to be made. If that answered your question, sorry, let me just.
I'll pivot to my second question and see if in my head whether there's any value in pursuing a theoretical exercise of presumably in the contract there was a value established to ensure that the contractor assumed the catastrophic risk. We must have been able to assign a value to that. I'm just trying to establish if we are able to provide that now. My second question is, again, not fully appreciating when the feasibility study comes back, I'm trying to better understand the relationship between the feasibility study results and what question we're hoping it asks or answers rather, and whether we believe that we will have enough of an answer within the first 6 months that does not require us to further extend and further extend. Are we going to have enough of an answer with the feasibility study that will, the likelihood would be that we wouldn't be in a position of further extending for 6 months. The reason I'm asking you this question is tethered to my first answer. If we don't reasonably think we're going to have an answer, a definitive answer of direction and instruction from the feasibility study that would inform what that new contract looks like, are we exposed by offloading the catastrophic risk element onto the shareholder when we may not be in a position to be definitive on the status, future status of that contract? Does that make any sense at all?
Yeah, you can.
Okay, I'm going to start and then I will look to my colleagues for any other input. But I mean, I think we're at a point where the investment cost to essentially buy this catastrophic failure response, we've recommending that it's not worth that any longer because it's more expensive than the equipment has value to preserve. So it's, you know, it's like when you decide it's time to stop taking your car to the shop and get a new one. We're at that point where we're just trying to figure out what the new thing looks like, right? And we do expect to have some recommendations that provide that clarity with the feasibility study. If although I'm generating some talk over here, so I'm expecting that Linda's going to chime in and perhaps correct me. But that's why we're doing this, right? Is that we are at a point where these kinds of investment in this aged out, it's depreciated, the value of this equipment. And so we just don't want to put our money into it any longer, but we do want to get what we can out of it. Mm-hmm. And so that's why we're doing the feasibility study now. And And we do expect to have those answers. Does that help?
I get that. Thank you through the chair. I guess when I have to determine whether I need to put another nickel in my really sexy magic van, in my rider, when I pull up my glove compartment, my stuff, it doesn't say catastrophic failure though. I guess that's what when I hear that word, it's scary. And I want to know if there's a financial amount assigned to it. That's the rub of my question of the exposure financially of like, at some point, I'm not putting in another dime into my magic wagon. I get that. But it doesn't say catastrophic failure as an identifiable decision-making on my renewal thing. That's all.
A catastrophic failure would be defined by a top engine overhaul requirement. Let's say something like that. So it would say these pumps are, these engines, the engine needs all new compartments and they need to be, done. And the cost, we know that in order to bring that equipment up to have another 20-year lifespan, the investment would be somewhere between $350,000 and $500,000. That is the ballpark estimate that Toromont has provided to us in order to extend that life by 20 years. So without doing that investment, the equipment has almost come to, it only has about 25,000 hours of operation, say, left on it. Under the original timeline. So the original timeline for that equipment is 165,000 hours. So we want to use the equipment while we're in the process and get the revenue from the electricity that we're creating for the short term until the end of July, which is when our FIT contract ends. And then the results of the feasibility will make the determination on whether we would move forward with perhaps doing the capital investment into that equipment, doing an overhaul, and renegotiating then with Toromont, because they would do that. And then they would reinvest in the contract that says they will do whatever needs to be done. They'll do all the maintenance, they'll do all the overhaul, they will insure the equipment to ensure that whatever needs to get done will be, and that's what we mean by catastrophic failure protection from Toromont.
Okay, that's first-time speaker, so I'm going to add myself, and then second-time speaker, Councillor Wang. So Councillor Taddison, if you want to take the chair. So I think that last answer was helpful. I was just going to try and clarify. So the catastrophic maintenance part of the contract is sort of like an insurance policy. And that's the financial value. So if we have a home insurance, if the roof leaks, we've paid our monthly payments, which is equivalent to the maintenance contract. Roof leaks, the insurance company is going to cover it to whatever the cost is, up to whatever the specifications are. But we have a deductible at our home insurance. Is there any kind of deductible on the maintenance contract? No? Yeah. Okay. So the financial value then would be the overhaul, as Vice President was just saying, but we are doing the calculation, I think, saying as the President said, where the value of it isn't worth it. And we know we have a decision point coming in 6 months. So therefore, we're not going to invest the extra maintenance cost. But historically, if there had been a catastrophic failure, engine needed an overhaul, that would have been covered in what we already paid. There'd be no incremental expense. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I think that's helpful for me. Okay. And then, thank you. Then the other question I had, Councillor Wang raised a question about the liquidity of the company. And I think the statement was something like, we have less than a year of cash in the bank. When I'm looking at the financial statements, I see $850,000, which is a slight increase from last year. And then the net of receivables and payables is essentially a wash. So I just wanted to get feedback on that comment and just a statement on the liquidity of HRPI.
Yeah, so I can provide a current bank balance as of today, or as of September 29th. So we were sitting at a $730,000 in the bank. When we forecast out to the remainder of the year, taking into consideration even like the cost of the feasibility study, that portion there, we're going to be approximately close to 570,000. That's our estimate. So I would say then looking out 6 months, we're still sustainable. We can still pay our monthly bills that we currently have. But again, if we got into a catastrophic failure, we didn't have that included, then that's where the costs come in. If the revenue stopped coming in, then that would obviously have a financial impact on our bank balance, and that would start to draw down quickly.
Okay, thank you for answering that. Those are all my questions. I'll take the chair back.
Okay,
Councillor
sir.
Wang for a second time.
Thank you. So I'm mostly with you. I think that where I'm trying to understand is we're going to negotiate a new maintenance contract with Toromont for 6 months outside and excluding a catastrophic failure portion. So what is that actually getting us? Because even if they are getting the maintenance, at this point, because we are so close to end of life, isn't most every type of maintenance going to be a catastrophic failure kind of maintenance? Like that's, what are we getting for this 6 months?
So the equipment fails often, sometimes on system calibration for the metering that is taking place, and that is an easy fix. Sometimes it means just having Toromont come in, change out a spark plug, change out something. And so those would be then charged for time and equipment charges, and they would be relatively probably small. Where we would be looking at and having to make decisions is if part of the engine went, and then we had to. At this point in time, we haven't had that happen. So I don't know what the cost would be, but we would get estimates. So what we would be paying them for right now is for them to provide us with a set fee for coming to site and exploring what is the problem, and a set price for time of use of their time. So that's basically what we would be paying them for. We would be negotiating for the contract. So it would be kind of a pay-as-you-go type of contract that we would be entering into with them.
So I also recognize that we are
as far as an hourly charge and a time charge, they're negotiable. That's what we've been advised.
We had the Toromont until assuming, or sorry, let's just put into place that this Toromont actually did like we had catastrophic failure right up until July of next year. Let's just assume. And catastrophic failure failed in the March of this contract. What kind of repair, would we get a brand new engine out of this, or they would only repair up until the 160,000 runtime hours of 165,000 runtime hours kind of standard? Is that how we would calculate what the catastrophic failure maintenance would look like?
At this point in time, my understanding of the contract says that if we were to have catastrophic failure between now and the end of our contract, they would come in and they would do whatever is necessary to get that engine up and running. However, that does not necessarily mean that they would do a top engine overhaul or everything that needs to be done to get it, they would get it running. So I don't know what the difference is for that. We would have to discuss that with Toromont. But at this point in time, up until now, they have come in, and any kind of equipment changes that need to be done to the yellow iron, to the equipment itself, they have totally covered the cost of it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Tattison.
I think I'm going to put this in terms that me as a rural, guy can understand. So we're driving a winter beater. I've got a mechanic, and I think it's time to take the collision insurance off my winter beater and then just drive it until she goes. But I'm still going to take it to my mechanic to get regular oil changes. Okay, I get it, and I can support that.
But so very simply, where were you half an hour ago? Okay, I'm not seeing any further speakers. So where are we here? Did we get a mover and seconder? No. Yeah.
Through the chair, Councillor, we are going to approve this at the board resolution stage.
Is that right here? Thank you.
No problem,
Approve the
Councillor.
recommendations as part of the Board of Directors resolutions. So we will move on to motions. So resolutions of the Hamilton.
Councillor,
sorry.
we're going to do the debrief section.
We changed the agenda. We're going to do a debrief. So maybe Councillor Wang, did you want to start with questions on that?
Yes. I think it's item 6 3/4, right? So, okay. 6. Thank you. So we were all in the same room when the AGM happened. Many of the other shareholders had questions about where we're at currently with this feasibility study, where we're at in terms of a strategy, where are we at in terms of essentially stopping the bleed of dollars, and are we at a decision point in terms of, do we shut her down? Do we move her along? So I think that this might be a good opportunity to have a debrief on the AGM and perhaps give us an update as to where we're at with all of these different strategies. So then that way we can be a little more, I don't know if the next step is either at the next AGM to update, or maybe it is a communications update to the shareholder. I'm not sure what the next steps look like, but I think that it's timely for us to have this board meeting right after the AGM, and so we can actually have these conversations out loud. So I don't know, President, if you wanted to start us off.
Thank you. So through the chair, there's two different fact pieces here. One is at the Woodward wastewater treatment plant, and we've got the feasibility study that will report back on what we recommend to go forward, considering the financial viability and the environmental requirements that we have to treat with based on our operating licensing there. So that one I think is a little more clear that we have a path forward defined. And where we're a little bit less so is with the Glanbrook landfill. And the challenge that we have there is that the future output of methane is really not clear from the city's perspective. So from HRP Inc.'s vantage point on this, and the lines between where the city's role ends and HRP Inc.'s begins, I can maybe ask, we've got Director McCormick here who can help with what's going on in the city's solid waste division with respect to the landfill. And then I'll ask Linda to chime in with how we would respond to that, or Vice President Campbell to weigh in on what we can do from HRP Inc.'s perspective.
Okay, through the chair, Joel McCormick, Acting Director of Waste Management. Just to give a high-level overview and then possibly pass it over to Manager Mulholland to fill in some gaps. From a landfill perspective and a gas collection system perspective, we will be adding some additional wells in 2026, approximately 8 of them, which we anticipate some additional gas being collected and then generated through the process in itself. I believe I will pass it to you if there's anything on top of that, but other than, just go ahead.
Good afternoon. Paul Mulholland, Acting Manager for Waste Collections, usually Senior Project Manager of Landfills. So to add on to what Joel says, yeah, we we're putting these wells in as part of an Ontario regulation that requires that we have an active landfill gas collection system at the Glanbrook landfill. This is to not only mitigate odors, surface emissions, but also off-site migration of landfill gas, which we monitor for all of these things. So that is our requirement from the city's end. I don't really have anything to add to that. Thank you.
Okay, so through the chair, for us, as we know that we had, when the business case was done for the landfill and the systems that were put in, we put in two generators, two 1.6 meg generators. And the business case was based on the gas that was available then, both engines could run and the output would be fantastic. And unfortunately, in recent years, as we've changed our collection strategy, there's no more organics going into the landfill, those kinds of things. We know that the amount of methane available has significantly reduced, and we have been operating the engines at, one at a time. And the reason that we're doing that is just like if you had two mixers at home, you use one, you don't want to ruin it and then go to the next one. So we're trying to keep them go. They require a certain amount of maintenance to be maintainable. And we would continue that. And we think that we would have another 5 to 8 years of available hours on those generators using both of them. So we would proceed to continue to use the landfill gas as a source for that, because they do have to collect it, and this allows us to get revenue from it. And we would like to start negotiations with the IESO to see what kind of contracts would be available, and we would continue in that. Again, that equipment is good without, they still have those Toromont contracts that say that they will maintain the equipment, and that's how we would propose to proceed. There are other options that we could look at, and I am being involved in some stakeholder engagements for other things that perhaps we can explore in the future. But at this point in time, I think that is the current process is what we would continue with.
President Kennedy?
Thank you. Thank you, Vice President Campbell. I would offer that I think it would be helpful if we did articulate this in writing about our understanding of where we are with the life cycle. So just a reflection on the summary of what we know about the assets that we're working with our partners from the City of Hamilton Solid Waste, where there's forecasts or the likelihood of how much methane we might get, and what that would mean for, given the life of the equipment that we've got and the forecast. So essentially a business case of why we want to continue the way we are. And then if needed for further study from there, we would take that direction. But I think an update back, potentially through a communication update would be appropriate.
Okay, you still have the floor.
I have further questions, Chair. So first is, do we own the assets at Glanbrook? At the Glanbrook landfill?
Through the chair, we own the 2 cogen units at Glenbrook and the 1 cogen unit at Woodward.
Okay, so HRPI owns those as they are not city assets. Those are HRPI assets. Okay, now perhaps I'll direct this to managers of landfill, Paul. Manager Paul. In terms of landfills, do we have any on the long-term horizon of opening up additional landfills?
No, we don't have any additional landfills. Glanbrook has capacity till about 2057.
2057, okay. There are other landfills in surrounding areas. Are these assets good enough that we could resell them and potentially recoup some costs?
Are you asking me?
I'm not sure, I'm not.
Are you asking about the landfill gas collection system?
Collection
That the
system.
city owns?
Yeah, because if we have the Glanbrook landfills up until 2057, generating less and less methane off of them, we have double the amount of collectors that we need. They are obviously viable, both are viable between 5 to 7 years. So is there a necessity to keep both of them? Just asking, like.
So I'll let HRP Inc. talk about the generators, but with regards to the actual landfill gas collection system, we do require that as part of Ontario regulations, and we have to expand it as we expand our landfill. And that's all spelled out in our ECA with our design and operations report.
So my question now is that as we're opening up additional cells, how, and I don't know if this is a HRP question or a landfills question, but could we feasibly move these generators into new cells? Or do we need, my question keeps coming down to the crux of, do we need 2 of these? So I don't know what those answers are, so that's why I'm posing the question now.
Sorry. Through the chair. Okay. Through the chair, at this point in time, well, I think it would be difficult to sell one of those. We could certainly, it is something that we could look at, we could explore. But I know that when we were talking 3 years ago about Woodward, we did put out some feelers to see if we could sell that equipment at the time. And there were no, we didn't have any offers, but we could certainly, that is certainly something that we could explore. All that would happen is that we would then be reliant on one engine, and if there was any failure in that engine, we wouldn't have a backup system. And then the landfill folks would need to, there would need to be more flaring.
More questions then. In the AGM, other councillors brought up, if we have changed the way we collect our waste, including organics and biological things, and now we're moving them to other parts of the city, I guess, how portable, or is there an opportunity to potentially take any of these cogen engines and put them and essentially adapt a new system for the organics? In Ward 4 in particular, there was a problem several years ago with smell. And then we worked on ventilation, perfumers, all of that stuff. But that's where a lot of the organics, I assume. But if we are changing fundamentally, the city is changing the way we collect it, could we move some of these assets to other parts of the city in order to leverage and use them in other ways?
So to answer your question, Councillor, through the chair, currently, so as is right now, a generator moving to the central composting facility, it wouldn't do anything anyways, just because of the technology that we have that's composting. It's an aerobic composting process, so there's really no methane gas or anything along those lines that's actually generated. So we are going through the process right now of the city's organic strategy and what will the city's collection and processing for organics look like moving forward, knowing that our current process is getting a little old. We're running about 20 years old at this point, and some updates are needed and will be needed in order to even increase the capacity. So on a, I guess, a long-winded answer there is we are going through that process to determine what our options are, whether it's status quo technology, whether it is processing third party, whether it is including an anaerobic type digestion process for the organics so that we could create gas and pull that gas and do as we do with the other locations. So we are working towards identifying what that strategy is moving forward with the goal of having organics removed from the landfill. Now, for the other question of whether or not the equipment can be moved around, that I would leave that to the team here, but I would imagine that by the time it's needed for when a decision is made from an organics strategy, it might be a bit of an old unit that may not live as long as we would need it for.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest that. We do have other first-time speakers. Councillor Taddison.
Just wanted to seek a little clarity. I do sit on the subcommittee for the landfill site, so I'm very well aware of what we've got with those cogen engines out there. You're saying that there's, I heard 5 to 8 years of longevity left, lifespan, whatever we want to call it. That's because they're running. One's resting while the other's running. So if they were both running full time, we might only have 4 years or 3 to 4 years. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so it's very important for me to see that sustained because the flaring that occurs when those are down or were down when they were a couple years ago for maintenance is not what we want to see happen, right? So it's important to keep that in place. Just noting that. And I won't go back to any car analogies. I just say it's like, you know, if you drive 2 cars, right? You've got what you're putting less mileage on each one. So that's where I'm at with that. And I just wanted the other councillors to understand that I think it's important that if we were to move that, the cost, and it would be cost inhibitive to sell and move something like that that's operating well right now. And I think that would be my recommendation, just to leave as is and let it settle into the sunset. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other first-time speakers? Not seeing any? Okay, Councillor Wang for a second time.
I appreciate Councillor Taddison's comments because I wasn't really that sure on those things, but it kind of influences a bunch of my second time questions. I think I wanted to understand too, adaptability of these units, but it sounds as though Councillor Taddison says that we ought to be keeping them in place. Have we ever determined that there was an adaptability opportunity? I think about Dundas, and Dundas is set for a massive renovation rehaul. Is there an opportunity to look at a cogen facility at Dundas or even growth and expansion at Woodward? Because we know that the cogen facility is only so big. So is there an opportunity to even repurpose and look at expanding Woodward, given that we have way more waste that's going through Woodward these days, and especially with growth in the East Mountain and all other parts of the city? We are looking at a phase 2 expansion of Woodward, so that I don't know if those have also been taken into consideration. I also think about what Markham has done with their wastewater, and they've been generating an energy off of heat off of their wastewater. So I don't know if we can adapt any of our assets to any of these opportunities, similar to what other municipalities are doing. So I just have lots of questions, and I don't know if we have an opportunity to really expand or think innovatively on leveraging our assets that HRPI currently owns. So I also think about algae, and I would think that there's opportunity with algae, and I also want to understand our biosolids, and why don't we ever make money off of the biosolids facility? But that's a whole other kit and caboodle that I could go down, but I'm not going to. Thank you.
Is there any staff response?
I can answer part of your question about Woodward, because at their first meeting with the successful consultant, Hamilton Water, was present as well. And part of their expansion at Woodward, they need the footprint of where our cogen right now sits. So that's something we need to talk together with Hamilton Water. But from what I understand, when they need to expand their facility where the cogen units right now sits, I don't think bringing an extra cogen unit at that point would be what they're looking for.
So then as Chair, as follow-up then, I've asked a lot of questions, and I still feel like we're still no closer to having either a fulsome strategy or some sort of, so do we need to provide direction to go away and think about this? Or is this something that we just wait for the facility, the feasibility to come back and then we can continue having further conversations? I feel as though as a standalone corporation, we are still waiting when other corporations would have been acting by now. So I'm worried that we're wasting time. Sorry.
Okay, is that a question to me or to the staff?
No.
Okay, so what we do know is we do have a feasibility study that's underway. We know we have a time frame to report back in Q2 2026 for Woodward, right? I think maybe I think, that's direction that's already been given, work's underway. What I don't think we've heard is around Glanbrook, what a plan is. We've heard 8 new wells to be opened this year by the city, a written report coming. I think maybe there's more articulation that needs to be expressed there, and potentially if the board's not satisfied, then maybe to give direction. So that's how I would kind of sum things up at this point. So, okay, so Councillor Taz.
So great point. Just wanted to follow up with some clarity, or maybe cause more confusion. Those 8 wells that we're going to be drilling, we're only looking at continuing the generators operating at the current rate. So even though we're drilling more wells, we're still only looking at one generator working at one at a time. Are those generators working 24/7, or are they on for like 8 hours a day, 12 hours a day? What's that look like? Can you just give us some insight into that and what would happen with the new wells coming online, possibly?
Currently, the generators are working 24/7, at one at a time. And that would continue unless the landfill balancing and the gas that we're seeing, unless we see that the volumes are increasing significantly, that we could operate to. There is a sweet point, according to our operators, that they need to be at in order to have both engines running at a good level.
Thank you. No more questions.
Yeah, so what I would just add there as chair is, if we step back, the whole point of the work to evaluate HRPI is to make it profitable again. And Woodward is part of that, and there's a plan there. And it sounds like at Glanbrook, there's a process, but that's also that we're just continuing, but there's also a lack of certainty on the amount of revenue that can be generated. And therefore, we don't know what the revenue expense equation looks like going forward to contribute to getting back to profitability. So maybe a question to President Kennedy. I should give you the chair to you, Councillor Tadison.
Go ahead.
So you said it'd be helpful to get something in writing to come back. My request would be, or a question, is it going to include steps that are going to speak to returning to profitability on the Glanbrook side of things, knowing that there's things we're unsure of? And if so, then how do we go about getting some certainty on some of the things that we don't understand today?
So I don't want to mislead the group to thinking that we are expecting to return to profitability at Glanbrook. I don't know that I think that we are not, based on the likelihood of the methane production, based on the kind of materials that we're receiving at the landfill to date. But what I think we should do is provide the clarity of an update of the state of things now at Glanbrook with the methane production that we've seen, what changes we're expecting to have happen with the new wells that are going online, and how we'll look at that with the generators that we've got there to move forward, and when we might want to look at things differently. So these are good questions, and I hear you that you want to see some more action on this more timely. The feasibility study has just started up. We had some delays in getting it going for various reasons, but we're moving ahead with that now in earnest, and we do have a good team engaged on it to get that moving. And with Glanbrook, it is a bit of a different story where we have what we have there now. We're not expecting to see a big increase, and so the likelihood of investment further investment there is lower. So that's what I think you can expect to see in a report, but I will look to my colleagues to see if I've made any missteps in my statement there, because sometimes I do.
Just to add to that through the chair, exactly what the president indicated there. If we look back at when the gas system was put in place, it was put into a landfill when we did have organics and we had a substantial amount of gas being developed. So profitability is high. We don't expect to ever be at that point because our goal as a landfill is to divert. So those materials that are going to create that gas, our goal is to not have them in that landfill, which again, kind of ties into the work that we're doing about the organic strategy moving forward. And do we have that ability to make that profitable, or do we have the ability to use that gas there for a beneficial? So when moving forward with the development of the landfill, we are required, as Manager Mulholland indicated, we will be putting gas systems and expanding our gas system on a regular basis because we're legally required to do that. But we will never get to that point where it would be a financial generator because it's not necessarily its first word I'm looking for, its main intention, I suppose. Its goal is more of a regulatory aspect or fulfilling that need with a side revenue aspect of it, like a secondary. Hope that helps.
Thank you, Joel. And as Vice Chair, I'll just add that I think it's a good thing that our landfill site's not creating more methane. So even though it's unfortunate for revenue generation, it's a good thing environmentally.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I guess I'll be clear on my statement. I can see how it was misleading. As an HRPI, as an entity, needs to be profitable. Any kind of company, you have different product lines, and some are going to be more profitable than others. So totally get that. And I get the feasibility at Woodward as part of that. I think still we would want to understand what the contribution is going to be from Glanbrook and how to maximize that, understand the uncertainty. But I would also say to what Director McCormick was just saying there is if it's, there's limitations based on diversion and the amount of methane that's available, but it's not just a financial play too. There's also environmental benefits, and those need to be articulated too, because so often in a commercial enterprise, those are not considered. Frankly, that's got us into societally a lot of the problems we're in today. So I think that needs to be part of the value proposition as well. But at the same time, HRPI needs to be financially viable. Because as has been articulated here and previously, if we're just flaring gas, that is also has negative impacts environmentally, even though there's no profit impact, although there's legislative impact, I get that. So I think that's just got to be part of how we are moving forward, and there needs to be a clear plan that includes both locations. So with that, I'll take the chair back.
It's yours.
Any other speakers? No? Okay. So then we just need mover and seconder, or do we? Yeah. Oh, Mayor Horvath, go ahead. Sorry.
Thanks, Chair. And I'm just going to be very, very brief. But I want to say thank you particularly to you and also to Councillor Wang reminding us of the conversation that was happening at the sole shareholders meeting. But sometimes there's a bit of confusion as to, who does what in terms of these shareholders' responsibilities. And so I appreciate you very much for clarifying that the other day, because I think it's we have a number of those kinds of situations where the city is the sole shareholder of a corporation, and every time we can try to clarify those roles is very beneficial, I think, to the members of council. So I really did want to just say thank you for stepping in with that the other day.
Thank you, Mayor Horvath. So no further speakers. Do we need to take any action on this item to receive or anything? See that. Yeah, mover and seconder to just receive. Okay, Councillor Taddison and Councillor Wang will second. All those in favor, show of hands. And that's everybody. Thank you. So now we're on to motions. 7.1, resolutions of the Hamilton Renewable Power Incorporated Board of Directors. May I have a mover and seconder to put the resolutions on the floor? Councillor Tattison, Councillor Maureen Wilson. Is there any discussion? Not seeing any. So we have a mover and seconder. We will go to the electronic vote. Just take a moment to get that vote up. The vote is up. And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much, everybody. And with no further business, we are adjourned at 2:35. Thank you to the clerks, to staff, and to my fellow board members. Thank you very much. Have a good day.